If you've been looking for a place to rent, you know how hard it is to find something right now. There's lots of competition for units, supply is limited, and prices keep going up. It's put potential renters and tenants nationwide in a bind. It's important you know there is help available. Josie Williams with the Greensboro Housing Coalition and Isaac Sturgill from Legal Aid of North Carolina are here to help you navigate the process. They're answering questions about rent issues, what you do if you get an eviction notice, and how you can help and how someone can help you pay rent. To ask them a question, just send it to us. Text questions to 336-379-5775. All right, Josie, let's start with you. Explain what the Greensboro Housing Coalition does.
Sure. We are a advocacy agency and referral agency. We partner with nonprofits in the area to address housing concerns related to tenant rights, related to home assessments. Sometimes folks' homes are not up to par, they're substandard. So we mediate between the landlord and the tenant. And we provide different services from rent and utility payments all the way to healthy home assessments and community engagement initiatives to advocate for the tenant on behalf of the tenant.
All right, Isaac, explain how legal aid can help someone dealing with a rent issue.
Sure. So Legal Aid of North Carolina is a nonprofit law firm. We have offices all across the state. We serve all 100 counties. And one of the main things that we do is we represent tenants that have an eviction court. So if you're a tenant and you've had an eviction case filed against you, we have attorneys that can represent you. We're the best at what we do in the state, and our services are free of charge for people who qualify.
Josie, we've constantly been getting emails over the past couple of months, really maybe the last couple of years since the pandemic started, of people really concerned because they're getting eviction notices. They're dealing with landlords who just don't seem to be working with them. Are you hearing more of this lately?
Absolutely. We've seen an increase in folks that are at risk of evictions during the pandemic. We're seeing an increase in people that are having issues with their landlord not maintaining the property, yet increasing the rent. And we're seeing a lot more of folks that are elderly that are at risk of homelessness, more than we've seen before the pandemic.
Isaac, are you also seeing something like that, an increase in people who are needing help? And if so, why do you think?
We are, unfortunately, and so we're at a kind of like a historical high as far as the number of people calling legal aid for representation in eviction court right now. Throughout the pandemic, there were some eviction moratoria and certain protections for tenants. Those moratoriums have been taken away at this point, but we still have people that are suffering loss of income due to COVID or missing time from work and so on. Unfortunately, we're getting more requests for help now than we ever have before.
Oftentimes, Josie, I listen to the 2 wants to know voicemails that we receive many times, on a couple dozen every single day, and oftentimes people don't know what to do because they are having an issue with their landlord and they just can't get something fixed. And oftentimes we will send them, if they live in Greensboro, to the landlord tenant dispute program. Can you explain how that program works?
The landlord tenant dispute program that operates with our agency, if you are living in conditions where the code enforcement officers are going to deem your unit condemned, we will step in. We will help you try to find a new location, and then we will help offset some of the costs of what that will cost for you to move. We will also work with you and the landlord in a liaison type of fashion to try to mediate the issue. We have been successful in getting people to stay in their home by getting the landlord to fix up the property. But in some cases, we do have to relocate them. And in many cases, the units have been condemned. We've seen more condemned properties or those at risk of condemnation in the last year than we've done in the last 3 years.
Why do you think that is?
I think in part, everybody, of course, has been affected financially in some way, particularly our property owners and landlords, but more so the renter. People lost many jobs haven't returned. I know that in some cases we have done much better as far as obtaining employment, but there are still hundreds of people that are not making a livable wage. There's still hundreds of people that have not increased their financial stability in their home due to the outcome that the pandemic has caused across it. And so the landlords, they're experiencing the same thing, and many have not been able to keep those properties up. Um, and that's just a big snowball effect that's happening across our city.
Isaac, at Legal Aid, we often send people your way as well when we hear from them having issues with paying rent. What is it that your office does when you receive a call like that from someone who's really having trouble?
Yeah, so if someone's having trouble keeping up with the rent, there's a variety of different things we do. If there's any local rental assistance available, we'll try to connect them with that resource. But ultimately, if they're behind on the rent and they have an eviction case filed against them, we will help them explore whether or not they have any legal defenses. So something like a landlord refusing to or failing to make repairs that are needed could be a defense to a non-payment of rent case. And there's other legal defenses that may be available as well. So we can help them assess the situation to see if there's a legal defense that could stop the eviction.
Can you explain something that is required to be fixed by a landlord and something that really isn't required, but people might think that it is?
Yeah, I can try to give some examples of that. So under the North Carolina law, the landlord, one thing they have to do is comply with the local housing code. So if there's a local housing code, the landlord has to comply with that and keep the property up to those standards. The landlord also has to keep the property in a fit and habitable condition, which essentially is a legal term that means that they have to keep the property livable, essentially. So for example, and I'll give an example. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. So Charlotte, North Carolina, the local housing code does not require air conditioning, for example. And so that may not be a housing code violation, but if it gets hot enough and it's so hot and there's no AC, the HVAC is broken or something to where the place is unlivable because it's 95 degrees inside, even though the local housing code doesn't require that, the landlord's responsibility to keep the place fit and habitable may require that, even though the local housing code does not.
Josie, speaking from a specifically Greensboro perspective, is that something that's required in Greensboro?
No, it's the same thing as Isaac mentioned. We're seeing a lot. It is extremely hot. We are seeing a lot of those properties that I described. Of course, their AC units are either not up to par, they're completely broken, or they are non-existent. And so you're talking about a small apartment in some cases where only maybe 600-700 feet with no AC. And some tenants believe that landlords are responsible for putting air conditioning units in there. Not necessarily. They are responsible, however, just as Isaac described, to make that unit livable. And when it becomes unlivable, they do probably have a case there. In those cases, we have gone out and assessed the property, checked the temperature, and then worked with the landlord. We have seen landlords put fans in windows. We've seen them go to the stores and bring back multiple fans and things. But as far as actually putting an AC unit into the home, they're not required by law to do that.
Is there a temperature that is, oh, I'm sorry, Isaac, go.
No, I would just interject to say I agree with that. I think even if the local housing code does not require it, if the temperatures reach a situation where it's a health hazard, then I think the landlord does have a responsibility to intervene at that point. So there's a difference between being uncomfortable and being to where it gets so hot that there's actually a hazard to someone's safety at that point.
All right, Isaac, Josie, thank you. We've got one segment down, 2 more to go. We appreciate you. Stay right here and we will be right back.